die issue. So as ek kan begin en vra dat al die paneellede vir ons op die forum beweeg. Ag, vir al die paneellede, ja, maar verskoon my, al die kandidate eerder. Ons vra dat wanneer die kandidate 'n vraag beantwoord, hulle naam sal sê in die begin van die vraag. Anina Botha het verskoning gemaak, sê dat ons 20 minute laat is as gevolg van akademiese verpligting. Alright, baie laat maar. So die eerste kwessie wat ons gaan opmaak is kritiese denke. Daar 10 van die kandidate tydens hulle beleidsverklaring kritiese denke gebruik as iets waarop hulle steun. So as ons dit opmaak en hoor wat hulle regtig hiermee bedoel. So ons kan begin met 'n vraag van die paneel af.
Sentrale Dissiplinêre manier van dink om krities te kyk na elke situasie en om te kyk of wat ons doen op vandag se kampus steeds relevant is tot die studente se welwees. How we can achieve critical thinking on campus, I think 3 main things. Firstly, we as a SRC should implement critical thoughts within our own lives, with our own friends, and in this way there are 16 people that will influence different people on campus. Secondly, it's very important to give all the people that do have leadership positions the correct training. And this is not just the house committees and the prims of campus, but also the people that serve on subcommittees and on societies. This way they will also start making a difference in their own frame of reference. And then thirdly, I think we should bring critical thinking back to student level and engage with students on their own level. Use things like Facebook, like blogs to communicate with students and start like their own debates around things that students actually want to talk about. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Gina. I'm another one of the students who mentioned critical thinking. I think that in order to engage students in critical thinking, you need to, as you said, engage students on their level, but in ways that are attractive to students. So doing things like monopolizing on the courageous conversations that the live and learn houses do, and spreading those across campus, doing things like flash mobs that make people think, things that are exciting, that students look up and see, okay, wow, that's going on today. I understand that. And so you're engaging with topics like sex and sexuality, or race, gender, environment, whatever it is. Students need to be accessible to these things in ways that appeal to them. So whether it's by conversations or workshops or debates, we need to address students in ways that they are interested in.
Hi, Rosdevol. And I think that critical thinking is something that is, to a great extent, a concept that needs to be well explained. In that critical thinking can be an academic thing, in which you stand apart from it and you view what's happening and you think critically about what's going on. You analyze and you have certain opinions. Then we get that what we as an SRC are standing for, which is critical engagement. And I believe that to actually get people to start thinking critically, we have to meet them at their frontier. You go to them, and instead of saying things to them, listen to them. Ask them questions, and listen to what they have to say. And from that, you'll be able to form debate. There are many, many forms that we can use on this campus to facilitate that. We have the new critical thinking society that's now being established for next year called SCOPE, and I think that can definitely drive something home in students, but then also to actually use the existing bodies that we have. Use the Prim Committee, use the different HARCOs, use the Societies Council, which in itself is so diverse. And basically, within those structures, from top all the way down, but also from the bottom up, because we see that that's really happening now. I mean, if one looks at the riots and things that are happening in London, etc., you see that stuff is starting to happen from ground level up and not from top level down. And to embrace that, and to do things like Gina said, to get people ignited, to do something different. This society is totally visually overstimulated, and that we actually need to start engaging with different senses, as well as them thinking about things. But not only thinking and talking, doing. Because at the end of the day, if you have an opinion, you have a thought, and it doesn't turn into an action, what's the use? Thank you.
Geen zover. Alright, as 'n paneel het vra nie kan ons oopmaak en gehoor vir enige iemand wat 'n vraag het aan die studente. Lovely.
Right. Hello everyone. Most of you know me as a nice person, but today I'm going to be very difficult just because you want my vote, or I have to make you work for it. I've got two questions specifically. The first question I want to ask is, when we talk about critical thinking, it's really beautiful and what I can say, but I want to actually bring it down to some of the real issues on this campus, and I want to ask just generally, whoever wants to answer, what is your what role do you think critical thinking is going to play with regards to transformation and the language policy on campus? That's the first one, I can't remember the other ones, but so long, just answer us, how do you feel about transformation and the language policy, and where does your critical thinking come into that? What would you like to do if you got voted onto the SRC for that? But I've remembered my second question. Specifically at the first year that's running, I want to know why you think we should vote for you, and I don't mean that in an attacking way, but I want to know how do you think you can play a role, especially as someone who's still new on this campus? Thank you.
Right, I'm going to address the transformation question first and then move on to Kai. I'm going to take two for this.
Thank you, Lavin. That's a good question. My name is Alma Diamond. Firstly, I agree with everything that's been said about critical thinking. But I would like to, especially since that question, also with a very practical example. That's something I've been thinking of or about for quite a while. I was on the SRC subcommittee for transformation this year. And the thing is, a lot of transformation is obviously happening on campus, and it's about, you have to address how people's thinking about that. But the core issues and how people think about transformation what's happening, I think, that's just from my perspective, but a lot of it's happening in the res and PS or environment, okay? Because that's where you're living, that's where you're engaging socially, and that's where you need to change perceptions, in my opinion. And the idea that I've had this year, and I think that's really good, is the best example I've had. Obviously, you need to engage with people at ground level, but where people have the most interest. Ek gaan oorspronklik afspreek en dan wil mense die meeste interne belang, ek sê altyd ons sukkel mense te kry vir SR, maar mense stel belang in hoekom. Mense sit voor, mense is passief oor hoekom, en dit is die waarskynlik die net hoe hulle staan. En ek dink dis vir moet inkom. My ideale wat ek regtig dink baie goed sal werk is die voorbeeld was ons het die SR vir MGD vir 'n dag gereël wat hy alle MGD-houders gevat het. So jy sit met almal wat beheer is van MGD in hulle prosesse om een tafel en praat oor die kwessies rondom MGD. En dit was vir my 'n ongelooflike ervaring om hier daar uitgestap en het regtig in die eerste plek baie geleer van my prosesse, meer ongelooflik krities omgegaan met wat aangaan. Want jy het verskillende idees, verskillende perspektiewe, oppassie en jy het meer 'n deurvoer van inligting van bo af. En dit gaan deur na die huise te introduseer. En ek dink om te gaan sit met goed soos die Saudi report of om te gaan sit met issues soos wat moet gebeur met transformasie, hoe werk die prosesse, maar om regtig die hulpbors van diversiteit of wat ook al die portefeuilles en prosesse om een tafel te laat sit en nie net een keer die jaar nie, maar gereeld om te praat oor. Want as jy die hulpbosstrukture inkry, kry jy dit regtig op grond van weer. En dis net een praktiese antwoord.
Hi, I'm Simone Kai. Transformation, sure, it's adapting and changing to situations that are actually currently an issue. What they've said, critical thinking, I'm not going to carry on harping on about critical thinking. Any thinking you do should in theory be critical. You should be having a reasoned out opinion on it. But when you're transforming, you are adapting to something new. And you mentioned the toll beleid, and it's something that I've had my heart on for a long time, in the sense of I do not always understand what the basis of it is. We have a lot of tradition, sure. We're a culture that needs to adapt and change to what's currently going on. When we look at the toll beleid specifically, you look at Stellenbosch University, and we are not necessarily worldly recognized because of the fact that we are not English-based. And yet, we still have a lot of people want to attend here, and a lot of people want to come here because they know it's one of the best universities in our country. So, critically thinking about the toll beleid, we have to adapt and think about it in the sense of, are we looking for an outside perspective and the external influences that we want, or are we looking on a more internal, national sort of sphere on how we want to influence and use that to adapt and transform into what we're going and where we're going to?
Professor Plessis.
I like very much the idea that all thinking should be critical. So can I ask for some of the candidates to tell us how you practice that? So here's what I'm looking for. An example from your life about an important issue in which you used to have one opinion, and through the practice of critical thinking you now hold an importantly different position.
Good afternoon, I'm Deel Bartman. For some of you, it may not be a surprise, but I used to be like this huge feminist back in high school and everything. And then when I came to varsity, I realized that something like learning how to cook isn't just something that a girl needs to do. And something like being able to do washing isn't something that only a girl needs to be able to do. And my bag broke today, and I got a sewing kit out and I fixed it on the rowing plane. And what I learned in my 3 years at varsity so far was that something like cooking and sewing and washing, it shouldn't be connotated with being a woman. It's something practical that people need to learn to be able to survive. Because you learn how to cook, for example, to be able to eat. And you learn how to do washing so that your clothes can be clean and so that you can seem like well represented in public, for example. So, since I came to varsity, I learned that just because women were historically disadvantaged doesn't mean that all of a sudden we need to make ourselves seem better than men all of a sudden. We are all equal, we are all people. And that is one thing that from university I've learned, and that was my critical thought. Thank you.
Professor tevrede met die antwoord?
Ja,
Right.
Hi, my name is Wynand Spruyt. I'd like to take an example from a resident's life. The residence Huistuin, I had the opportunity of being a house committee member for spirituality, or geestelik, however you want to translate that, as well as community interaction. And with the portfolio of geestelik, we had once a week we had a thing at Res. The whole residence is together lunch, so the whole residence is there, and we had the opportunity to have huisgodsdienst, or however you want to translate that. Just like a Christian Bible study, basically, where you read a verse. And there was a lot of unhappiness in the rest about that, and we had to think critically about how we're going to include other religions and other perspectives. So we changed that and called it a bietjie insig, a bit of insight, which created a lot of space for other guys to share their opinions, especially on the difficult topic of religion, as well as maybe figured out in Volgenhof. And we've had a lot of critical discussions around things that happened this year. As you might have known, I've read with Indrag and a whole Backflaky Blight, which has facilitated a whole critical thinking, new critical thinking dynamics in residency. Thank you.